I mean, I kind of thought the fiat system was breaking up entirely in 2008. I thought it was big enough to do it, but I was mistaken. And of course, they got another bubble going. They got the everything bubble going, and they did that by holding interest rates at 0% from '09 to 2015, which was just, I mean, I remember in the early days in like '09, Bernanke saying, "Oh yeah, we'll probably be reducing the balance sheet in a year, and we're going to unwind this. This is all temporary, et cetera, et cetera." Well, they didn't, and then they had one QE. So well, we'll only need one QE. Well, they had three QEs, so
Well, four, right?
yeah, actually four.
Yeah.
Technically four, and so their balance sheet went from 800 billion to almost 3+ trillion, and so I was just like, oh my God, and so to me that was kind of the launch point of the what I call the critical phase of sound money. I mean, we're now in the real, it's really critical now, right? And but it got launched off of 2008, and we made a lot of things happen from 2008 to present. Of course, then in 2019 they had they tried to taper, weren't successful at doing that. Powell had to pivot, and then COVID hit, and all hell broke loose, and they used that as cover to give away a ton of money and print even more money. So $3 trillion balance sheet became a $9 trillion balance sheet, and so the rest is history. I mean, throughout all of that, I just grew in my conviction that we are on the right path by investing in sound money, and so I've focused on sound money assets more aggressively all the way along. The Bitcoin thing, I think I probably heard about it in 11 or 12. I was very active in the Ron Paul movement. I gave him some money and helped him out, and a lot of the libertarians, and some of those guys were doing it and buying it at $2. Gosh, I wish I'd paid attention, right?
But we all wish that.
Yeah, right. You can't look back. And I got to 100 or so, and I wanted to buy it. Actually, I was really lucky. I was very close to buying some through Mt. Gox. I'd filled out the forms. I was about to send them some money, and they failed. And I was like, oh Jesus, because I know people who lost their money there. And then right after Mt. Gox failed, Coinbase kind of opened and got launched and so forth. So I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013, through Coinbase. Just a handful of coins, not a huge number, but I want to say I paid 300 or something for them. So yeah, it was pretty good. But I kind of put them away, didn't pay attention, and I don't know, a year or two later, I woke up and was like, hey, these things are a couple $1,000 or $1,000 a pop, and maybe there's something here. So then I started digging in more and buying more and dollar cost averaging, and in 2017, which was kind of one of the first big ramps where it went from that 1,000 to 17, roughly 17,000 in that Thanksgiving of 2017. I just, I thought, oh, this is it, and I just kept buying and buying and buying all the way up. And of course, 17 was the top, then it went to 10, and I doubled down again. Then it went to 3.5, and I doubled down again. So I've been through a couple of cycles, and as time has gone by, I've gotten more and more conviction that we're right about this. My initial, I think I've said this in other calls or other things, but my initial concern was this is a technology and it can break. I mean, everyone's, we all have computers, particularly back. You got to remember, I was in the computers in the old days. I mean, we used to on IBM PCs where you had MS-DOS. I mean, you used to get this thing called the blue screen. I mean, you just be playing around your computer and suddenly the whole thing would freeze.
Yeah.
Right. And you'd have to reboot it and. So I'm thinking, how can you have money on a computer when the damn thing blows up? It's not. I mean,
who's going to reboot the money?
Who's going to reboot the money? So hash rates and blockchain. I mean, I didn't get it, right? I mean, I clearly didn't get it. But I went to, there were some MIT Bitcoin groups, and I went to those, and I listened to some people speaking, and I sat next to some core developers. They kind of explained it to me, and it became, I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe this really can last. But remember, this is still early days, and you had the fork war, all the forks. So I got a lot of those forks. Fortunately, I sold them the minute I got them, if I could. And then, then you had the blockchain wars. I mean, so, my principal concern, I always thought, this is sound money. I get it, the 21 million limit. But my principal concern was, is this technology going to be robust enough? Could it break? And as we've actually even read recently, some people have done some nice jobs of talking about how, there's a backdoor. And there were some early problems. There were some times when it really was at risk.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the core developers kind of got together, figured it out, fixed it. And I think now we're far enough down the road that I put the risk of a big technological failure at a very, very low probability. But in the early days, I don't think anybody. I mean, I know people who were working on it and were developers and stuff, and even they said, I don't know, it could blow up. I mean, we're not sure. I mean, I sat next to a core developer at an MIT thing. I said, what worries you? He said, well, sometimes I'll submit a chain, we'll do it, and this, that, and the other. And I think to myself, holy shit, I just croaked the whole network. I mean, this guy's like a PhD computer side genius, and he's worried about croaking the whole network. So I'm like, how am I going to put millions of dollars in this? Or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in this? Okay, I'll have a little bit of it, but But time went by, and so you got more comfortable.
That's the Lindy effect, right?
Right.
The longer that something survives,
Exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
I think most of us, it's just like you said, how we all wish we bought at $2 or $300 even sounds really nice right now, or in the future probably 30,000 will sound really nice
It
too.
will to somebody, yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely will.
Kids, right?
Yeah.
There's you have a whole coin. Holy shit! A coin's worth $10 million. Yeah, I know. It is.
Yeah. But yeah, I think people have trouble realizing that back in those early days, even the people working on it, they had no idea.
No.
Even Hal Finney and Satoshi Nakamoto themselves said that either this is going to be worth a whole bunch of money, tens of millions of dollars, like you just said, or it'll be worth nothing.
Right.
And either one's entirely possible.
Yeah. Well, and you hear these funny stories. I know I've met so many people in the community now, and I knew some young people who were involved with mining it, and back then it was cheap and easy. The block was. Some of these people had 5,000 or 10,000 coins. Okay, they're in their teens and 20s, and they were running miners. This is in 2011 or 12. And they were running miners out of their the house, their parents' basement kind of thing. And I think, did you keep any of them? Well, no. It kind of got to $2, and I didn't have a car, and a car cost $40,000. I had 20,000 coins. I said, fuck it, I sold it and bought a car. You hear stories like that, and you just think, oh dear God! Can you imagine if you just said, "Well, I'll sell part of it"? You know what I mean? Maybe you didn't need such a nice car, right?
Well, I think about Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor has become famous within the Bitcoin world, infamous in the traditional finance world for his 140,000 coins. And I think that's one CEO of a moderate-sized company. Like, what happens when there are 500 or 1,000 CEOs all adopting a similar MicroStrategy Bitcoin acquisition strategy? It's like they're not going to get 100,000. They're not even going to get 10,000 coins.
No, they're not even going to get 1,000 coins. I looked at the math. There are several million. There are almost, I don't know how many billionaires there are, but there's like 20 or 30 million millionaires in the world. So not even every millionaire could have one Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? And Saylor ain't selling his. And the other thing is it's 21, but how many of those have been lost, right? I think we got to assume that 10 to 20% of the coins are sitting in a landfill because the guy forgot to, clean them off his computer. Right?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my most popular article or thread online. It goes into that exact math.
Yeah, I looked at that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you did.
I loved it. It was a great thread.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, but it goes to your exact point that I wonder to your comment about how these teenagers and kids are selling off tens of thousands of Bitcoin, not realizing what they were doing.
What they had,
Yeah, I wonder if we're in a similar spot today. If there's 21 million Bitcoin, there's really more like 14 million after you count for the lost ones.
Yeah.
The majority of them are already held by long-term holders. What if possibly in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years maybe, people look back and are like, wow, they sold 100,000 sats, or they sold 1 million sats. Oh, and yeah. I can't imagine what if they had held.
What were they thinking? Yeah. No, in fact, some of I have friends who, I think, and I feel sorry for these people actually who were pretty smart. They bought it early. They probably got it under $1,000, and and they did what so many people do, which is they didn't understand what they had, and they got a little greedy. And say it ran to I don't know, that 17. I know a person who bought it at 1,000. It ran to that 17. He had, I don't know how many he had, but that's a real, that's 17 extra money, right?
Yeah, 17 in the traditional finance world. That's crazy.
Right,
yeah.
You sell it, you freaking sell it, right? And he did, and it's like great, he made a few $100,000, but in his defense, here a bunch of years later, he could buy it for twice the 17, so it's not the worst mistake ever made, but. I think you have to understand what it is, and we have to. You've got to look at these adoption curves, and there's just no doubt in my mind. So I was in the venture capital business, and the biggest thing that we always looked at was we called it the dogs eating the food, and that means is there growing adoption and use. And so, forgetting for a minute whether it's a number go up, which will happen just based on supply and demand. What I care about is how many addresses there are, how much hash there is. How many people are coming into the network, how many countries are adopting it, how many Nigerians are using it. That's what I care about, because that's dogs eating the food. And as long as we have more dogs eating a fixed amount of food, the number's going to go up. That's like an obvious no-brainer. So, and it's surprising to me, honestly, that it's where it's at today, because I think it's incredibly cheap, and I think it's lower risk, arguably, than it was, back before all these technical things hadn't been, ironed out.